Hey everybody, it's Darren with VB Adrenaline, and um, this is more just to record this episode, but figure we go live anyways. And we're going to start a new series as we go into covering the 2028 class, and it's just simply going to be explaining and defining our PPV system, how we do our evaluations, what goes into them, why we do them, some of our terminology. And it's really a great idea, something we probably should have done a couple of years ago. And so it actually came from when a good friend from WC volleyball nerds came on and helped with signing day, and we had a great discussion on the philosophy behind the PPV system, etc. And he loved the idea, and after we talked for quite a while, over a couple days, he's like, wow, we really had no clue what this was, and we absolutely love it. We just didn't understand it. And just let me know that we needed better education and understanding behind the philosophy and exactly what it is. So we're going to break down the PPV system, just kind of step by step and point by point, and all of the top questions that come in and exactly what it is. And so it'll be on our Facebook page for people to go and look up questions and that come up, things they don't understand, and we'll post that, like I said, on Facebook. So this is part one of that, and hopefully it helps people as we go. So let's kind of get into that here, and starting with part one. And so lesson number one, and we just titled it Teaching a New Language, the PPV System, and what's behind it, because really that's what it is. It is a new language compared to what everybody is used to, and you need to retrain our thinking a little bit, but once you do it, it's valuable. And so lesson number one is simply, what is PPV and why the heck are you doing it? So we'll hide me here. So first of all, if you don't know, PPV stands for the prospect power value, and it's a cumulative score that's made up of several different factors that helps predict an athlete as a college prospect. And I think point number one is very, very important. These are not high school rankings. And so they're different from all of the other sites in that we are not ranking athletes as they are right now. So that's part of the reason we don't really start looking at volleyball players when they're in the 8th grade. Some of the tops that are at NTDP, we'll put them on there. We'll do a little bit, but we don't, for the simple fact of, hopefully that's why the NCAA stopped with the signing of 8th graders, the commitment of 8th graders to college scholarships. It's just too early to really tell a clear evaluation. And there's so much change that goes on with athletes that you're just doing them a disservice to evaluate them and rank them as an 8th grader. And a lot of times what goes on, I call it in basketball, we always called it the 7th grade All-American syndrome, where you were 6 inches taller than everybody as coming up through Y ball in 4th and 5th grade, and you could shoot and you can dribble. So you were the point guard and you brought it up and you shot. And if you missed, you got the rebound and you shot again. And if you missed, you got the rebound and you shot again. And you scored the most points and you had the most rebounds and you were the tallest kid on the team. And so everybody looked at you and you were the best player. And then with some of those kids, they never grew again. And everybody loved them in like 5th grade. And they never got any better. And everybody told them how amazing they were in 5th and 6th grade. And everybody passed them up. They didn't make the high school team. Right? Well, when I used to coach basketball and, in high school and whatever, that's really, really hard for that kid and those parents to take. And they take it out on the high school coach. And, you must be an idiot because in 5th grade, he scored 20 points a game and he was the best player. And they were. And so we don't do evaluations when they're that young for that reason. There's so much growth up and down. Right? Somebody might be done growing in 7th, 8th grade, and they might not get any better. And somebody might not have started to, develop at all. And so that's really important. And when you're doing high school rankings, okay, you might be dominating, or club rankings, you might be dominating 11 and 12U because you're just bigger than everybody and you've already developed and you just don't get any better. And when you're number 1 in the country, it's hard to move you from number 1 in the country because everybody's like, what the heck? But in theory, college coaches look at that and they're like, hey, they call that a low ceiling. Right? And so when we use the term high ceiling, that means somebody is maybe not the most amazing player now, but college coaches are looking at her and saying, yeah, when she's 20, that's going to be a completely different player. And so that's the biggest thing with the PPV that people do not understand. And we'll get that all the time. And they'll say, hey, my daughter was AAU All-American. Doesn't matter. And that's really hard for people to get, but that's not what we are doing. We're not ranking them based on how many kills they had in the 5th, biggest class in the 30th biggest state in America. And it's not to be harsh or mean. It doesn't matter. And you know who else that doesn't matter to? College coaches. But a lot of these things they won't come out and say because it's bad PR. And we're just being honest about it, that we're looking at that like a college coach was. Now, if I'm writing for another website and I'm doing high school rankings, absolutely. If all my job is to cover South Dakota high school, which it was for a number of years, and now somebody else has come over and they do their little thing. Okay, it's different. I rank differently because I'm only ranking South Dakota high school volleyball. If I'm ranking or projecting Division I prospects, I'm not looking at those stats. Okay, and we'll do a lesson on stats and why those don't matter. You should be able to figure that out, but parents, that's difficult to see through the parenthood. But you should be able to figure that out, that the smallest class in Montana, the competition is not as the same as it is in the largest class in Texas. So to say that, hey, I had 1,800 kills in the smallest class in Montana is not the same stat as it is in the largest class in Texas. And that's why coaches don't look at it. All right. Next thing, PPV, again, it's looking at their college prospect, right? We're looking at them as a prospect. So now that's a projection. And yes, that is sometimes a slippery slope, right? We're projecting. So when we project, those things change. Okay. And that's why we've explained there will be changes to your PPV up and down. Okay. Up and down. Okay. Just like in lineups in college, okay. Number one team in the country, undefeated, Nebraska, their lineup has moved in and out. Look at their bro situation, in and out. Okay. And those are both two pretty decent players that have had to deal with, right? Look, their projection going up and down. All right. So we evaluate like college recruiters, not saying college recruiter, saying we have one on the staff. I'm saying that in the past we've employed others and we have several that help us specifically during the club season. Okay, whether it's in the past, we've had people that have worked with the Under Armour crew. We've had people that have been professional volleyball coaches. We've had people that have been former NCAA coaches that are just looking for something to do, some extra money. Okay, people that regional coaches that we call pro scouts because they are pro scouts. That's what they've done for a living. Okay, and so we evaluate them like a college recruiter does, and that's why we, as part-time contractors, employ them, right? And they take notes, but they don't take notes like they're ranking high school kids. They take notes like they are recruiting for college, okay? And so when you see some of our write-ups, there's going to be constructive feedback, right? As they're looking at making notes on if they're recruiting for college, right? They're not going to be, oh, dominates right now. They're going to be saying, hey, to play at the Division I level, she does this really well, needs to work on this. And I would think if you all want to play there, you would want to know the things you need to work on. All right. Now, going down to bullet point 4, this takes, right, and it makes us look at much different factors than other sites. It just does. Where they might look at stats, okay, we don't. What matters to us, like I said, your height. We use the example, and I've told Bria this. Bria Bro, poster child for the PPV. Okay, perfect example. 2 years ago, February, March, go back, look at all those other sites, look where she was ranked. You couldn't find her. You better hit that forward button, several pages. We gave her a PPV in plus 200. Why? Because she's 6'4", 6'5", could touch 10 foot, at least 10.4. That's something a college coach projects very highly. She just was playing behind somebody, the number 1 or number 2 opposite in the country was also on her team. Doesn't mean Bria wasn't a great college prospect. It means she also had a great college prospect on her team. So she didn't play a lot. Okay. And so that's what's different about us. Or another site would look at her and be like, they didn't even know her because she didn't get on the floor and she didn't have any stats and she didn't make all tournament and etc. We looked at her, asked around about her, and knew there was a lot of interest regardless because college coaches go to practice. They see her at practice. They saw her at camps. She was known, right? So that's what's different. So we had her as very high PPV much earlier. Now, all of a sudden, okay, everybody else goes to nationals. Okay, and they're not stupid. They walk by the court and they can see 25 Division I coaches at her court. Everybody else on her team is signed. Well, mysteriously, she gets bumped way up in the rankings. Okay, but her PPV was very high earlier because she was a high prospect much earlier than she got moved up the rankings. So that's the difference. Now, the changing part, we've asked about that. Well, how did she change? Well, how do you change on a depth chart? You're different week to week. Okay? You know, like I said, we have scouts, we have prospects. Not me as much. I watch film. I'm trying to learn. I'm asking questions so I can get better. A lot of the times, if it's just me, yeah, there's only so much I can watch. But with people watching, and we take master notes as well. And if somebody doesn't look as good, there's notes taken. Just like in practice, when you get to college, there are notes taken, there are stats taken. You're not the same every day. And like it or not, you can be a starter and then you cannot be a starter. You can have a couple bad days in a row, and that's life, right? And so you go up, you go down. You can go to a place like NTDP and go up against 3 or 4 athletes equally talented, and they may just look better than you. And I know whatever, it's supposed to be a training place, but you're also competing, and they aren't going to tell you that, but they're evaluating you as well. It's a recruiting spot, and they're evaluating you, right? They're just not telling you that. When they leave, they're adjusting their recruiting charts. They just are. And that's okay. You're there to get better. You're there to train, but you're there to compete. And so our PPVs change. They change. I believe those other sites, they change their rankings. But the PPV, it flows. The other thing, and we send these out to the people that have player profiles, we will start sending these. When your height changes, when you update your approach touch, your block touch, those things change. It matters who's inviting you to select camps, because we'll go into that on the next lesson of where they are on the prestige levels. Okay, so all those things matter with the PPV. So it's often changing. Now, I want to go over this last line, then we'll move on. Dealing with change or critique is something that most athletes struggle with at college. And this is something that we get directly from, Division I coaches. And they said, if there's one thing athletes could come much more prepared for, it's being able to deal with critique or criticism once they get to college. And I have a definite reason for that, but it's because they don't get that when they're preps, right? The ones going to Division I are the top athletes at everything, and nobody's telling them. All right, we've talked about that at NTDP. All right, we've talked about that at training. We've talked about that on every website. Nobody's giving them constructive feedback on things to work on. Everybody's saying they're the best at, they're great at, and that's good. But that's not how it is when you get to college. It just isn't. And text or ask anybody at college. And so it's something that athletes really need to work on. And it's because they don't work on that They're not asked to work on that. Every website tells them how great they are. Every select camp they go to tells them how great they are, right? Every camp they go to tells them how great they are, right? Everybody tweets about them, tells them how great they are. And that's good. But it doesn't help them when they get to college, because that's not how it works. So moving on. So people talk about the levels, and I thought we had that on here. All right. So our levels. And yeah, there are a few of them. And people are like, why in the heck didn't you just go with the 5-star, 4-star, 3-star? Well, number one, that's other people use that, and we weren't going to copy that. And number two, what does 5-star mean? Like, somebody's 5-star means something totally different. And I've, subscribe, I follow those things. I don't know what it means. It's really good, I guess. And we're trying to be transparent with what we're doing. And you might not like how we evaluate, but at least we're trying to be transparent with it. And so I don't know what a 5-star means. So then our 5-star means one thing, and somebody else's 5-star means another thing, and somebody else's means another thing. Well, what's a 5-star mean, and what's the value of it? And the other thing, when I followed and worked briefly at one of the top football recruiting sites a long, long time ago, the person who founded that sat me down and said, listen, a 5-star needs to be really, really special. You don't just hand those out like cookies, right? Like, that needs to mean something. And so our diamond level, you don't just get those. Like, that means on the court, off the court, everything. Like, you don't just hand those out. And to me, that's what a 5-star always meant. And if you look at the number on, I think, 24/7 Sports for football, there are very, very few of those compared to the thousands of recruits. And I just think that's kind of overused sometimes in other ones. And so the levels, in essence, they're designed to replicate how colleges would sort players. And I know we don't like to do this, but that's how it goes. They have to sort prospects so they know where to recruit and who to recruit. Unfortunately, they don't recruit everybody, and you guys know that. And whether it hurts your feelings or not, they just don't. And we know not everybody's going to Penn State, right? Just like not everybody got invited to Texas's experience camp. What they take 18 or something total in the country. So you're not all going there, and you can get mad at whoever invites them. That's how it is. And so the same thing with us. You can get mad if you're not a gold level prospect, but not everybody is. And it's just how they sort players. Okay. And I believe they don't call it the same thing that we do, right? Diamond, gold, silver, reds, oranges, green, blue, but they call it something, right? And they call it something. And so I believe they use a layered or a tiered method versus numbers. They don't rank. They just don't rank. Now, when they get down to a layer or a tier, they may say, hey, these are the 3 we really want to target. Push comes to shove, Jenny's our number 1 of those 3. Okay. But they don't put a big board out and say number 1 setter, number 2 setter, number 85 setter. They don't. They have a layer. Okay. And they just kind of, they do it by ability, and they put them in groups. Okay. They put them in ability groups, and they might also do it by, do I have a blocking middle? Do I have an attacking middle? We've talked about colleges wanting different types of setters. Okay, some people will only take taller. They won't even look at shorter. Okay, so they're doing it by height. Some don't care. And so, again, they're doing it more by ability levels than they are by a ranking, right? I don't think there's ever been a college coach that's like, oh, I think we really like her. Oh, she's not ranked high enough on whoever's ranking. We can't take her. It's sarcasm, but it doesn't happen. It does not happen. Okay. And so the PPV is designed to replicate how colleges sort it out, just kind of like how the NFL does a draft board. Okay. It's the same way college football does their big board. They start to evaluate, right? They do combines and they evaluate talent, physical traits, and groups. Regional has something to do with it. And these things all factor in, and you come up with a number and you come up with a group, and then that gets tinier and tinier. And you come up with your target list. And then from there, that target list gets smaller and smaller until you come up with a group of, I'm guessing, about 3. And that is your main target list. And you go out and really target them, and you find a couple that are extremely interested, but then you still have another list below that. Now, there's all kinds of other tricks. Somebody comes in at the very end that you didn't think you had a shot at. Well, your list might be right out the window. And we'll talk about those things as we go, but they want to look for athletes that are in a range at or above their prestige level. Okay, we'll talk about that. So the reason we came up with this was to show athletes about where they're at. Okay, so if you're a silver level athlete, we also do this for schools. Okay, and we're not trying to upset the schools, but we've tracked recruiting. We've tracked the recruits that they've been able to sign and target. And so we have the prestige level of recruits. Okay, and we've told you, start at the top, Nebraska, Texas, and we slowly trickle down based on who they've signed, not who we like, who we don't like, based on who they've targeted and who has targeted them. Okay, and we move schools up and schools down. All right, and so the reason we've done that is because we want to show athletes the most appropriate level for them. And so if you're an elite red to red athlete, we can show you some schools that are about in your range so you can get an idea of the type of schools that might be looking at you. And you can start to research them early. So you do your homework, and maybe you reach out to them early, or you start to talk to their athletes early, or you get an idea of their campus. You don't have to wait, right? It's to give athletes an advantage. And so they do their homework. That's the whole reason behind it, not to upset some school, even though we always do because they think they're higher. And it's to help athletes know their range. Okay. And that's why we use a tiered method. Now, obviously, people take things personally and they think they should be a higher level. Well, that's fine. But we're not doing it to upset you personally. We're doing the best we can. We don't wake up one day and say, hey, can we make Jenny Smith mad? Yeah, let's put her on the wrong level. We don't do that. We're trying to put you there on the best level you can so we can show you where you're at. Now, things move all the time. We move athletes all the time because we find things out about them. They grow, their vertical changes, right? They get invited to 3 camps they didn't get invited to before. All these things matter. But that's why we do the levels. All right. Now, schools, it helps the schools as well. They figure out what their range is. And then their job is to win themselves out and recruit themselves out of their range. Okay. We've talked about this a lot. Louisville and Pittsburgh, last 10 years. They didn't start, okay. Pitt was not recruiting Anna Watson 10 years ago. Okay. Anna Watson, diamond level prospect. They weren't recruiting her 10 years ago. Diamond level prospects weren't looking at Pitt 10 years ago. Them and Louisville were down here. They looked at talent that might be interested in them that was slightly above their prestige level. Okay, they targeted them. They signed them. They locked them in. They trained the heck out of them. They won. And then they moved up. And then they did the same thing. And they moved up a little bit more. And now they're in elite red, and they're recruiting a different type of athlete now. And then they won. And now they just cracked their way into silver. And then they won. And then all of a sudden, guess what? About 5 years ago, get into a Final Four. And now they're recruiting a whole different type of prospect. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen 10 years ago. So their range, I put the Louisville method, okay, just because I've talked with their staff more, and they told me specifically, the kids gave me the timeline. And they said, look back 10 years, 9 years, 10 years ago, who we were after, but we hit on them. They stayed. We won matches we need to win. And then the next year it was this class. And then the next year it was this class, right? And then we had somebody that we thought was undervalued because they were an inch too small. We got them. But that's what we mean by moving up your range as a program. And we've talked about that multiple times. So that's why we do the levels. Okay, the levels are simply supposed to match up a player to the schools to show you where you're at. And that's all the way up and down. Okay, and I know everyone wants to talk about the diamond and the gold, but that's from blue to green. Those are great programs that win a lot of volleyball. And that's where a majority of the players are, is that orange, green, blue. It's probably it's well over 60, almost 70% of the athletes are there. Okay, and so this is probably the most important line, is at the bottom. As a PPV, it's much more about the level than it is any kind of rank. So coaches worry much more about a level than they do a rank. They really could care less about a score than a level. So they start talking about silver level prospects, red level. They get what that means. Okay, yep, I can project. I can see that type of kid. Silver, yep, I get it. Elite orange, yep, with a high ceiling, got it. They think that means elite red to possibly silver. They understand that. Okay, green, got it. Is it green with a high ceiling? Is it green that doesn't work very hard? That means something else to them. So that's what it means. Is it green that comes from a small club and just hasn't played great competition, but they have a small high ceiling? That means something else to them as well. Right? So all of these things matter, but the level of athlete means more than rank number 64 in their state. Right? Because 64 in Texas means a lot more than number 8 in, like, my home state of South Dakota. And that's not bashing South Dakota. That means a totally different thing. Right? It just doesn't mean the same thing. Okay? So that's a really important statement. PPV, it's much more about the level than it is the rank. Okay, and real quick, why do you guys do all this? Number one, like or West women's college volleyball nerds, When I came on, we talked with them. When people get it, they like it because they understand it. It's like an NFL draft board. And it's a great example of this. Look at the setters for 2028 and how many of those teams, top teams, need a setter. They all need setters. They can't just say we're getting this one. They don't know right now. So they're all doing the same thing. They got to map out 4 or 5 or 6 of them they really like right now. Okay. And that's what they're doing. Okay. We want one that's accurate. We got to have one that can play at the net. We have to have one with great accuracy. So that's what they're doing right now. And they want to get ones on levels. Is there somebody we have a shot at? Somebody that's regional? They're all doing this right now. Whether they know it and they call it PPV or levels, they're doing this right now. Okay. And they understand this is realistic and it's accurate. Might not have the PPV. You might not be a 218. You might be a 212, but it's pretty dang accurate. And this is how coaches recruit. I call it something different, but this is how most of them do this. It puts analytics from a lot more into play, and much less bias. And that's what we're trying to do with all of our stuff. Yeah. Is there some bias? Yeah. I'm sure there's some, but there's a lot less than just throwing out your list and having to sort them. There's a lot of bias involved in that. And I've done it. But with this, we throw your height into an algorithm. We throw your approach touch, your block touch into an algorithm. Okay. We have an idea based on where you're invited for camps. That matters. There's a lot of things that are thrown into calculations, and that gives you a certain score, and it helps us formulate, okay, all those things because they matter. So there's a lot of things that are a formalized score, and it takes a lot of the bias out, and it gives us a pretty decent starting point. When the athletes accept what their lane is, it can help them focus, research, and plan better for the recruitment in advance. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do. And it gives them a level and a range of giving them an idea of who might start talking to them down the road. And then are there outliers? Or they're, hey, I was only 5'10" and I got talked to by Penn State. Yeah, of course there are. We're not perfect. You guys know that. But I'd like to say I know we're considered more accurate by the right people. The accuracy better? Yeah, it is. Matter of fact, it's much better. Also, this does depend on athletes giving us information. So when they have a player profile and they actually update it, clubs help us out. It's much more accurate, but it is better. And again, it's much more about the level than it is the rank. So that's lesson one. Went a little long, but we'll update this every week with a little part, and we'll keep putting it on our Facebook, and you can check it out. Check as much, little visit out as you want, but it's going to be here for you. You ever have questions, you refer back to it at any time. So thanks, you guys.